Hello, my name is Estella Bennett, and I am past president of the Historical Society and currently secretary.
And I'm Glenn Poole, and I'm president and treasurer of the Mhstour Historical Society. This is the Historical Society building. It was built by the Grand Army of the Republic in the late 1800s. For the last 50 years, it's been the Mhstour Historical Society Museum. As you come visit our museum, you'll see that we have several major displays. We have, on the right, we have Mhstour businesses, and then a little further down, we have a Boy Scout display. Then we have a military display that covers Civil War right through currently. The Mhstour Academy display. We have a Moosehead manufacturing display of the Mhstour Band, and then church display, and then the Mhstour Railroad display.
This is a photo of the Casey family in Mhstour. They had several members of the family were in World War II and Korea. Dora Casey contacted us and had us go over to her home and gave us her collection when she was in the Navy. She was stationed in Hawaii. She had many items that she gave us, including her uniform. But the family was very patriotic and did their duty for the United States in serving their country. This is Dora's uniform that she gave us, including her purse and the cap. And we have other military uniforms. Some of them were donated or were loaned to the museum by Bill Ranter in Mhstour, who has quite a collection. This is an overall picture of part of our military display. We're very fortunate to have a number of World War I items that were given us by various veterans from Mhstour. This is Revolutionary War soldier John Mower, whose family was in Mhstour, that's the oldest military item that we have at the museum, is this trunk. This is the entirety of the trunk. We're very fortunate to have this. This is a war training book. It's a machinist training, and it was used at Pratt & Whitney, and Glenn Poole, the president of the Historical Society's mother, worked there, as well as one of our members' mother, who was Dag Greenleaf, and they met Connecticut while they were working at Pratt & Whitney. So the women had their roles during the World War II conflict as well. This is our part of our World War I display. We have the helmet, an actual gas mask, and other artillery rounds. This is a ration book that you could only purchase sugar, gas, various items that were rationed during World War II. This book belonged to Raymond E. Hammond, and I think it's very interesting that the two blue and the red coins were if you could only purchase 3 pounds of sugar instead of 5 pounds of sugar because there wasn't enough sugar to go around, they would give you a coin to use for the remaining 2 pounds of sugar that you could get. This is the actual ration coupon books themselves that you would have to take to the store. This one is Everett Lamont, and that's just the way everybody had to give for the war effort. There were a lot of volunteer organizations in Mhstour that would collect scrap metal, used clothing. The Red Cross met every week to do bandages. It was an all-out effort in Mhstour, and they also had an air tower that was manned by high school kids. A lot of the time it was manned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it was located in the building behind the museum, which sat over the canal, and they made a little tower up there for the students and the citizens of Mhstour to man. These continue to be the war rations. There were also, besides the cardboard rationing, there were also the stickers that we have in our collection to show the whole process of being able to purchase food and gas during that time. This is part of the Vietnam War display. We had many boys from Mhstour that were in Vietnam. This is some of the money that they had gotten over there. There's also a medal down in the corner of the display. This is William Lindy. He and his brother Elmer were in World War I. William was an engineer. Elmer was a sharpshooter with the Yankee Division. We are very fortunate to have the letters that Elmer Lindy sent home to his mother, his sister, and his brother, urging him not to join the military. That would be William. William did join and did go overseas during World War I. One of Elmer's best friends' name was Frank Flint, and we have Frank Flint's diary, which goes along well with Elmer's letters home because you have a day-to-day events, including those that were killed and wounded, and Frank went so far as to make a map of a couple of their units were men that were died during World War I. This is Glenn's father, Oswald Cookie Poole.
He was a medic in World War II, and he landed in Normandy on the second day. We have a display of all the towns he was in going through into Germany. That's a picture of him right there.
This is Mickey Anderson. He was a grandson of one of our members, Mickey and Flora Anderson, who were very active in the Historical Society. He was in the Middle East, and unfortunately, after he got home from the Middle East, he was killed in a motorcycle accident. And we have his uniform and his photo. That's the photo of little Mickey Anderson when he was in the Middle East. This is the uniform of Mickey Anderson. These are brothers Herb and Philip Flint, who are in Korea with the 370th Army Amphibious Engineers. These are the two brothers. This is Mickey Anderson's helmet. Mickey received Purple Heart while he was serving in Korea. He was in from 1955 to 57. We have my father was Kobe Cronholm, and we have his uniform on display and also his flag. He served in Ceylon during the China-Burma Indian Deer Campaign, and he was located at the headquarters in Ceylon. This is Donald McPherson, our member Don McPherson Allen's father, and he was in World War II as well. Monson had a great number of men that served during all of the wars from Civil War onward. And we have a nice collection of their records at the museum, and they're all by war in alphabetical order. So if anybody wants to come in and do some research, they're more than welcome on the days that we're open. This is a discharge emblem and a lapel button. We've been fortunate to get many items for all the different wars and memorabilia that they brought home from the war, which is on display at the museum. This is a silver defense film for the community shelter program. There were fallout shelters even up until probably the 1980s. We have a sign from a fallout shelter that was located in Dover Foxcroft. And even in the 50s, when Glenn and I were both going to Monson Grammar School, we used to have programs at school where there would be we'd have to get underneath our desk in case there was a nuclear attack. So the Cold War continued on. This is Avo Korsman. He was in the Coast Guard. He served in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam.
This is a display case for our Monson Academy memorabilia. You can see in the lower right, that's the championship trophy from the 1932 state champions. And Monson also won the state championship in 1968. And those are the basketballs that were part of that state championship. And in the center, lower center there, you see the book, Monson Academy Revisited. And that was a history of Monson Academy done by several former students.
The early settlers of Monson were very anxious to have their children be schooled, and there were several one-room schoolhouses all throughout the Monson area region. The academy itself, the Monson Academy, was incorporated in July 26 of 1847, and the first session of school was held in 1848. In March of 1860, the building burned and was quickly replaced. In 1969, the last class graduated from Monson Academy after the townspeople voted to merge with the Dover Foxcroft district. In 1984, the academy building was dismantled.
We have a couple of trophy display cases that were originally up in the academy, and they include a lot of basketball, skiing, and public speaking and dramatic club trophies that students won over the years. Both basketball and skiing were very, very big, very important in Monson Academy. This is a state championship trophy that Monson won in 1968. It was one of the smaller teams in numbers, so there were only 8 players on the team. Ironically, the same number of players that when they won in 1932. This is a Slater jacket that was donated by Stuart Anderson, who was a member of that team. And the other members of that team in 1968 were Roy Taylor, Bud Levitt, Dick Woodard, Greg Lander, Ed Crenham, Jeff Greenleaf, and Steve Bray. This is Sulo Vinio. He played in 1938 and graduated from Monson Academy. You will see in the next photo the basketball impressions up on the ceiling just above there. And basketball brought the town together because it was so popular, and the whole town went to these basketball games to see them, both the girls and the boys' basketball games. You can see on the ceiling imprints of the basketballs they used to play in this area before the gym was built. The gym was built in, I believe, 1951, and it was easily the best basketball gym in the whole area. And this was the cheerleaders' uniform. It was referred to by some of the cheerleaders as the clown costume, so not everybody was happy with that design. This is a slide rule, a training slide rule. Before calculators, this is how you multiplied and divided, and so this was used to train students at Monson Academy.
This display case is located at the museum in the back at the corner, and we have several antique dishes in there as well as some business items. And one of the items we have is the Homer Hill dairy bottles. We have a couple of different sizes. The Homer family were one of the earlier families in Monson, and they not only had a dairy farm, but they sold vegetables and were very involved in town affairs. This is another size bottle from the Homer Hill, as well as the old-fashioned flat irons that used to be put on the back of the wood stoves to heat up so the ladies could do their ironing. This is a lunch box that the men used to take to the quarries, and I've seen pictures of the men with these lunch boxes. The bottom held hot liquids, and if they didn't have soup or something that they were going to take, they would just put in warm water, and then the section at the lower part of this pitcher fits inside, which would keep anything on the second level warm, and such as their tea or something of that nature. But it's pretty nifty to have these old lunch boxes. This is a slate butter box, and in 1886, the refrigerator and butter box factory was opened on the second floor of the grist mill, and there are different types of these butter boxes. This one has the slate insert so that the butter fits in between the slate openings there, and slate will hold cold for a long, long time. The other butter boxes were completely encased in slate with wood around the outside, and they sealed with a clasp. And as I said, the slate will hold the cold for a long time.
This is an overview of Moosehead Manufacturing in Monson. In 1943, during the war, the Monson Maine Slate Company closed, so a board of trade was formed to try to encourage some other business to come to this location. They finally encouraged Talford and John Durham to come to Monson and open Moosehead Manufacturing. Moosehead Manufacturing borrowed some money from the Board of Trade, which is made up by local businessmen, and that money that they borrowed was all paid back. One of the reasons they wanted to get a company in here was to give the returning soldiers a place to work. They were concerned that if they didn't have a place to work, they would leave Monson. Moosehead Manufacturing operated until 2007 when it was closed down permanently. Many of the homes in town have Moosehead manufacturing furniture. You see in this photo is a coffee table that was loaned to the museum, and you see the sign that was displayed at their sales offices.
This is an overview of the Monson band display. The Monson Coronet Band was organized in September of 1887 by citizen John Greenleaf, Hescock, and Walter Jackson. The band continued being led by Jackson until the early 1950s. In 1930, a bandstand was built, which is now located in the lot beside the church on Upper Main Street. The band was very, very active. They used to travel throughout Maine doing concerts and performing in parades.
The instrument you see here, which we have on display in the museum, is called a double bell euphonium. It was a very unusual instrument that you could either set it up to play from either bell or both, and it was used in the Monson Band.
This was the Monson Band. As I said, it was organized in 1887. The Monson Onaway Lodge also donated their drum that they used to use in parades. And there's a photo at the bottom of the picture of the band on parade in Monson. And when they disbanded, they gave their instruments to the Monson Academy, and they had a small band for a length of time. This is a photo of the Monson Band. We have a large collection of photos in the files in the downstairs research room if anybody wants to come in and learn more about the Monson Band and who the leaders were and who the participants were. This helmet might not seem very high-tech if you're looking at it, but compared to what the men wore when they first started working down the quarries, it was pretty advanced safety equipment. They would go down with just their street clothes on, just a soft hat, if they had a hat at all. They wore their own boots. There were no OSHA laws. There were many, many injuries in the quarries and many, many deaths over the years. And also in this photo, if you'll look in the lower left-hand corner, you'll see a nut and a bolt, which is made out of slate. And so the bolt actually unscrews. This is a slicker. That was another advanced piece of technology. It's always about the same temperature in the quarries, somewhere in the 50s, and it's always wet down there. And these men finally were issued slickers. Also on the display table, there are items such as the helmets with the miner lights on them, which is interesting. We have many, many, many photos of the quarries in our archives in the research room at the museum, and so those are interesting to look at as well. This organ was donated to us from the Baptist Church in Monson. We also have the pulpit that they used. It was a wooden pulpit. The founding fathers of Monson were very interested in church affairs, and they built this Baptist church in 1827. It was a separate church until 1959, when the building itself, the Baptist church, was moved down and joined with the Congregational Church, where it is today. This is a slate piece that we have that have the ministers that were at the Baptist church from 1827. And it's a very impressive piece to see. It's quite large, and as I said, it is engraved in slate. This is a finished Bible that was donated to us by Amanda Matson Brown. She was a teacher at Monson Elementary, and it's all in Finnish. This Bible was owned by Owen Williams. He was a Welsh settler in Monson. We had a number of Swedish, Finnish, and Welsh immigrants to Monson, as well as Canadian and some Irish, and it was quite a multilingual town for many years, most of it due to the slate industry. These Swedish Bibles were donated by one of our Historical Society members. Her name was Evangeline Anderson Jackson, And she and her husband, Cliff, gave a donation to the museum, and we have renamed our research room in memory of both Evangeline and Cliff. The Swedes had two churches in Monson. There was a Swedish Lutheran church, which stands today and is a beautiful building, and there was a Swedish Methodist church, and both of them had their sermons were done in both Swedish and English.
This is the Monson Railroad display. In 1883, soon after the slate business started, Monson installed a narrow gauge railroad. It was called the 2x6 because the rails were 2 feet wide and it was 6 miles long. It went down to Abbott. You can see the Monson Junction sign. It's the original sign that was on the Monson Junction building down in Abbott. The last engineer on the railroad was Elwin French. The railroad closed in 1943, and Elwin built a model of the railroad, a working model, with the engines and flat cars and all the cars that the railroad had. Here we have some of the items from the railroad and the railroad station. There's a mail bag there on the red bench that was used to haul the mail back and forth from Abbott. This was the potty on the train. What it boiled down to was a funnel, and whatever went in just went out on the tracks, which was pretty common on railroads back then. This is the overall view of the display with the models that Elwin French built. Here you can see a little more detail of the models that he built with the train house and the station.
These are two items that we have in our collection. One is a cheese press, and the other one is a corn husker. We have other items. There's also a little milk jug at the bottom there. We have a few other items from the agricultural industry in Monson. In the early settlement of Monson, it was like most other Maine towns that relied on agriculture as their main source of income. And these are just two items from there. And then after slate was discovered, slowly the agricultural industry in Monson and the wood industry in Monson were overshadowed with employment at the quarries. But these are two items from our past. Most people are aware that there were hermits in Maine throughout the early history of the areas, but especially up in our area, apparently. We were notified or asked a few years ago by a student at the University of Maine who was doing a project on hermits in Maine, and said that she had found that Monson was sort of the mecca of hermits, which was a little bit of a surprise to us. So we started doing some research, and we did find information about various hermits, and one of them was Hank the Hermit. And he lived in the Monson area, and after much research, we found that he was in World War I. He had grown up in Belfast, was an only child. Both of his grandfathers were sea captains. He went into World War I, and he never went home. He never went back to Belfast. He went up to Chesuncook and worked in a woods camp up there for a few years, and then kind of dropped out of sight as far as paperwork goes. He lived all throughout the Monson area, and after doing a lot of research, we found that he had worked in the woods at various times for Harry Davis. He had picked spruce gum for Harry Davis and earned a little bit of money, but mainly he just lived off the land. And we happened upon this one picture of him. He doesn't look any too happy to be having his picture taken, but he had visited one of the camps into Ottawa.
Yes, this picture was given to us by Terry Adams, who had a camp in Ottawa. And Terry said his father took this picture, and he was not sure what his father did for Hank the Hermit, but it must have been valuable because Hank never wanted his picture taken. But here he is with his gun.
Harry was a huge man, as you can tell by this picture probably. He was a very large man. And later in his life, when he became ill, he was befriended by the Brown family in Monson that had a general store. And when he became ill, they let him stay in one of the houses that they owned, and that's where he passed away. After seeing his little tiny obituary, I went down to the funeral home in Dover, and they had records on him, and we found that he was buried in Belfast. My husband and I went down to Belfast to do more research, and he did not have a headstone. And the Monson Historical Society and the Veterans Administration, we got him a headstone, and we had a ceremony down there. A few years later, I was contacted by one of his family members who lives in Belfast, and he would have been her great uncle. And they did not know what had ever happened to Hank the Hermit, and as he was commonly known in Monson. And since that time, we've kept in contact with them.
This is a display of antique toys that was donated to the museum by Alan Stora. They are in excellent condition and in cabinet to the right, just as you come in the museum.
This is a separate display that has a lot of some of the older items that we have at the museum on display at this moment. There were a lot of little children's bonnets and little shoes, but this is a nursery rhyme riddle book from 1870. But this is a very nice little display as well.
This is the cobbler's bench that was used by Hartley Smith in Monson. These are some of his tools you see there. This is a picture of Hartley in his shop. You can see all of his tools. His shop was down on Hebron Street, right beside the lake, and he had that shop for many years and was a resident of Monson until he died.
We are very fortunate to have a collection from the Vinton School, which was located in southeast Monson. Again, this shows the school bells that were used at the Vinton School. You can also see a little pencil case that was from Jackie Coogan, so you can see it was quite old. There's a book holder and a slate chalkboard. Also in the front of that display, the long item that you see on the right bottom of that display case is an eye chart. It has little numbers on the flat part of it, the longer part, and that black piece slides back and forth, and whatever the child is looking through the end on the furthest on the right, and that would be their vision. It would be 2030 or 2020, or it's really a very unique item, and we're very glad to have that at the museum. This is a school book from 1896. Writing was very important even in the 50s when we were going to school. Handwriting was number one. And there's also a little spelling book there. These are two slate pencils. The pencils were used by the school children on these slate chalkboards, and they were donated by Arthur Nesberg, who was at Monson Academy in 1950. This is a bucket and water dipper that were used at the Vinton School. The children would have to go get the water for the day's school session, and they also had to build fires there to have a heat, as most one-room schoolhouses. They had outhouses. They had girls' outhouse and a boys', which were attached to the building. The Vinton School is still standing and is really in very good condition. And we're fortunate to have several of the one-room schoolhouses still in existence. This next series of pictures are all one-room schoolhouses that were located in Monson. Some of them are still standing, some are not, but none of them are used as one-room schoolhouses. They all consolidated to Monson Grammar School. This building is now the Finnish Farmers Club, and that was called the Long School. And that is one of them that is still standing. It has been changed a little bit. There's been an addition made that now has a kitchen, but it is on Route 15 in Monson and still in use.
We have an interesting taxidermy display here at the museum. Wallace Homer was a taxidermist in Monson, and he produced many items. Not all of these, but he did that for a number of years. You can see here's a Maine coyote, and we have birds' nests of different types, a saw-whet owl. This is a black bear that was killed on the farm down in southeast Monson that had just attacked a few too many sheep. They solved that problem. These are birds that were on loan to us, and we also have a loon besides these birds.
Looking down into the case, it's showing all three levels of it. The top has a miniature handmade canoe. The second level has a musical saw, and the third level has some old items, such as in the lower left-hand corner, there's a lantern, an old lantern. Just in front of that are some old light bulbs, the old Edison bulbs with a filament. There's a bed warmer there that you would heat up the bed before you climbed into it. And some of these are some old items that we also have at the museum. This is the musical saw that was played by Louise Grover, and she used to play it at various events all throughout Monson. Back in the 50s, I remember her playing many times at school functions, and she was really pretty good at it, and she always had a bandana she'd wear around her head. I'm sure it will bring back many memories for kids that grew up in the 40s and 50s and 60s in Monson.
Winter travel on foot was obviously pretty important in Monson. These are a pair of snowshoes that were donated by the family of Sarv Larson. Sarv was the basketball coach in the 30s, and his teams won many county championships and the state championship in 1932. He was an excellent coach for several years. Many people see this and are confused about what it is, but it is a ski mold. And you would put the skis in between and heat with steam, and that's how you would curl up the end of the skis. And obviously these skis were very long. Here's a set of skis that would have been made by this mold.
This is an overview of our immigration items that we have. There were a number of Swedish and Finnish families in Monson, as well as Welsh, as we talked about earlier. This case, you'll notice on the left-hand side on the top left is the Welsh Bible that we've already spoken about. Next to that is a homemade paddle, and it was used to take bread out of the oven. Next to that are some homemade skates that are wood and metal that you just strapped onto your shoes. On the bottom of the display case, in the center, you can see some birch bark shoes that had been made, and next to that are some leather boots that were made by a Finnish family in Monson. Out of necessity, because of the lack of money and the lack of items that were available, they made a lot of their own materials that they needed at the home, and this is a dough box that was handmade with you can see a paddle with it. We are fortunate to have a number of Finnish dresses that were used in dances, and probably some were used at the Monson Finn Hall at some point in time. This is an immigration to Maine board that was done by a gentleman who was doing a display for a museum in Portland, and he gave us a copy of it. It's really very interesting. We have done some research about especially the Swedish and Finnish population, because they were actually the newer comers. In 1880, the population of Monson was 863 people, and at that time, that was the beginning of the slate industry, and 10 of the families had been born in Sweden and 9 in Wales. By 1910, the population had increased to 1,240 people, with 158 of them being born in Sweden, 16 in Wales, and 90 in Finland. And by 1920, which was somewhat the end of the immigration as far as the slate workers, there were 1,079 people living in Monson. 90 of them were born in Sweden because they were, by that time, a second and third generation families, and 67 were born in Finland and 9 born in Wales. So there's really quite a number of Swedish and Finnish families that still have roots in Monson, and we are in the process of doing a new immigration project with a number of these families to trace their families back on where they came from in these two countries and the generations thereafter.
All right, Seth Stewart, who was a Civil War veteran and lived in Monson, was an artist and painter. And we have several of his paintings on display. This is an example of one of them, which is Archie's Island up on Lake Hebron. He was very well known and pretty much did landscapes in many of the Monson area. He also painted paddles, and they were sold at sportsman shows around New England. His son, Walter Stewart, also was a painter, and we have one of his paintings of a trout, which is on display in Monson at the Spring Creek Barbecue right now.
This is from the research room, which has been named for Cliff and Evangeline Jackson. The boxes on the left-hand side, which are gray, hold various items such as diaries, magazines, different memorabilia that would not fit into a file cabinet, and they are all marked as what's inside. We also have town reports. Those have all been scanned and are available online to research. The green books that are all in a row on the shelf are the glass plate negatives. We have probably 2,500 to 3,000 pictures that we've had made from our glass plates. The pink books are Civil War veterans individually by name alphabetically, and those are available to look through with as much information we could find. The purple books on the bottom are veterans of World War I, and the little green book beside that are the Spanish-American veterans. And all of those are searchable by last name alphabetically. Also, this summer, by 2022, they will be the World War II veterans books will be available. All the books in the center between the pink and the purple are all scrapbooks from the Piscataquis observers. Some of them began in the late 1800s right up through until the present day. 18 of these books have been indexed so that you can look up information on each individual families, or you can search it by clubs, by death, by crimes, and various other categories. There is an index for all of the scrapbooks that have been done to date that are next to the pink folders there. We have a number of local towns' history books, and we have research books, and we have the letters that were done by Elmer Lindy from World War I. We have a copy of the diary from Frank Flint in World War I. We have a lot of Civil War records from the National Archive that are in this room. These file cabinets have, the first file cabinet has family files alphabetically with anything that we find about a particular family, such an obituary, a marriage, a postcard that they might have sent to a relative in Monson. They're really quite invaluable, and we have our photos are located in this file cabinet. Those are all searchable by an index, which is located in the front of each section of photos, which are done in categories such as clubs, businesses, streets, and so on. We also have clubs, the clubs in Monson. Those are all in alphabetical order as well. There were many, many organizations in Monson over the years, and as we find items, we put them in the file folders.
All right. Here above these file cabinets, we have flat files, and in those we have stored several of the maps that we have and other documents that are best stored flat and not rolled up. Up on top of those flat files, we have several boxes of railroad information from the Monson Railroad. That's also railroad information below the flat files in those gray boxes beside the purple notebook. This is what we call our social room, right next to the research room. This item here was donated by myself and my wife, Molly. It was built by John Wentworth, Monson Historical Society member and former owner of Moosehead Manufacturing. And the top, which is a slate top, was donated by John Tatko of Sheldon Slate. You can see up on the wall a bird's eye view map of Monson, an old original one. And we have several other diplomas and photos in this room. This is a slate sink in this social room that was donated by Sheldon Slate, and a slate sideboard. This is our restroom, and you can see we've put some of the paintings by various painters and photos in here. And this sink was also donated by Sheldon Slate. This is the Town of Monson safe that was in the building and apparently is just too heavy to move anywhere. So that's the safe that the Historical Society uses. This is a cash register that was donated by Tim and Julie Anderson that was in the Monson General Store. It was originally in Bingham, but was moved to Monson many years ago.
The gift shop is in the room that was the former town office. The research room was the library, and the room that we call the social room was part of one of the bays for the fire trucks. So we have upgraded a little bit over the years. The gift shop has a number of items that are Swedish and Finnish heritage. We have a number of books that are done by local authors. These books are all, we have calendars that we put out each year. The book by Bill Lindy is a book of poems about Monson and his family. Final Mission is about the B-52 crash in Greenville. The center book is about...
The title of that book is Hermit, The Mysterious Life of Jim White. He was a hermit that lived in the Elliottsville area from about 1895 to 1934 when he died. And this book was written by Jeff Ryan and with lots of consultation with the Monson Historical Society.
And the book above that is Bill Geller. He has a number of books that he has published and which we have available at the Historical Society. We also have books that are done by Monson residents that have moved away. Laurie Anderson, his sister Wendy, and his brother Stuart have also all contributed books that we've had for sale. These are Swedish and Finnish items. As I said, we have a number. We have very popular are the Christmas ornaments that we have for sale. You can see a little piece of the Christmas tree that we have, but we get glassware and gnomes and candles and various other things, and we try to change that out quite often. We also have a number of slate items that have been made for sale. There are coasters with engravings and wall hangings. These are 2 jail cells, wooden jail cells, that were in the museum in the basement, probably put there when the GAR built the building. The first reference that I have found in them in the Piscataquis Observers was about 1909, and there was a boarding house ruckus. There was also a lumber camp riot, and very often people that were inebriated were placed in these cells for a little stay overnight. They also used to have a few vagrants would come into Monson, and they would put them in these cells and hold them as kind of an act of kindness. But nobody was here more than just probably a night or two. So it was this one has a pipe that's kind of in the center. If it wasn't there, obviously, in 1909, but it has wooden bunks and wooden doors that had just a piece of metal that kept it closed and the hinges, but I think they're pretty unique. And in the last picture and this picture were a couple of the vagrants that stayed there longer than overnight. The poor fellows, but they're very happy at the Monson Museum in the basement. They're well taken care of. Upstairs in the museum, we have a couple of kick sleds that are mounted on the wall, which are harder to take a picture of than this one that's located in the basement. Most of the other ones are just plain wood and metal. This one has been painted. We have a child's kick sled, and then we have adult kick sleds. Kick sleds are a Scandinavian item, and in 1914, Gus Johnson began making kick sleds in Monson to sell to the residents from his Chapin Avenue home. He was employed at Monson Main Slate Company for over 34 years. I'm sure there were probably other people in Monson that also made kick sleds, but we have pictures of the children at school with numerous kick sleds all lined up in a row, so it was very popular. I've talked to people that remember the men going to work with the kick sleds. Obviously, if they either had to walk to work or they'd have to take their horse. There was no place to stable the horse while they were at work, so most of them took the kick sled. They would put their lunch boxes on the seat, and then coming home, it was downhill if you worked up to the one of the quarries, and they would get home a lot faster than it was to get to work. A lot of the women would, or all the women would take their kick sleds to the store and put their groceries on the seat. There are a number of kick sleds still located in Monson, and on Snow Roller Day, they have numerous kick sleds available for people to try, and they have kick sled races.
All right, we also have on display at the museum the 1911 Monson fire truck. It's what is called a transition machine, so it's horse-drawn, but has a gasoline engine for a pump. You can also see on either side a long bar that runs parallel to the machine. There's one on each side, and should the engine not be working, 3 or 4 people could get on this bar and pump it up and down to pump the water. You clearly had to be very close to a water supply like the lake, but ironically, right after this was purchased in 1911, it became useful in one of the major fires in Monson.
On behalf of the Monson Historical Society, we would like to thank the Tri-County Technical Center Multimedia Program in Dexter and the students that participated in this process, and also instructor Poole. We do thank you very much for your cooperation, and we welcome everyone to come and visit the Monson Museum. We've just briefly touched on some of the items that we have in the collection, and it changes from year to year.
And we hope you'll come visit us and possibly join as a member of the Monson Historical Society. Thank you very much.